My name is Sophia Harris, 33 years old, the executive chef and owner of Haven Bistro in Chicago. Tonight marks the 8th anniversary of my marriage to my husband, David Harris. I spent nearly half a year preparing for this evening, personally tending to every detail. I chose table 8, the one with the best view of the city skyline, sparkling with lights. I designed a 6-course tasting menu, each dish representing an important milestone in our love story. The bottle of Dom Perignon champagne I ordered was David's favorite, the same one we opened when we bought our first apartment. I selected a midnight blue velvet dress, the color David once said suited me best, and I gently placed the snowflake-shaped hairpin in my hair. The first Christmas gift he ever gave me. Everything was ready. I hoped tonight would rekindle what had gradually grown cold between us. I stood in front of the mirror in the lounge, adjusting my lipstick, making one last adjustment. My heart beat faster as I looked at the clock, counting the minutes until David would step into the restaurant. I believed tonight would mark a turning point. Suddenly, my phone vibrated. I opened it, a smile still on my lips. But as I read the message, that smile vanished. I have to change tables tonight. I'm here with my colleague, Emily. Please understand, I'll make it up to you another night with something really special. Every hope I had nurtured for this evening disappeared. I stared at the phone screen, my heart sinking. The restaurant was still filled with the lively sounds of laughter and clinking glasses, rising in waves. But to me at that moment, it was all just distant, painful noise. I stepped out of the lounge, my heels clicking softly on the polished wooden floor of the restaurant. No one noticed the tension on my face, except for James, the bartender who had worked with me since the early days of Haven Bistro. James looked at me with concern but said nothing. I sat down on the high stool at the bar, my back to the bustling tables. My voice was low but firm. James, give me a glass of Dom Perignon, the one I had ordered for tonight. He nodded without a word, and in just a few seconds, a glass of golden champagne was placed in front of me. I lifted the glass quietly, watching the tiny bubbles cling to the sides and disappear. My heart tasted more bitterness than the wine. I hadn't meant to look over there, but the light from the chandelier fell on a familiar corner of the restaurant, and my eyes followed out of habit. Then I saw David, sitting there beside Emily. They laughed and talked naturally, as if the evening belonged to them alone. He helped her with her chair, leaned in, whispering something that made Emily cover her mouth. Giggling, I gripped the glass tighter, feeling both pain and numbness. Then my eyes stopped at Emily's wrist, where a glint of light made me feel as if someone had pushed me into a deep abyss. On her wrist was the diamond bracelet, the one that had belonged to my grandmother, Lucille Thompson. The bracelet with tiny diamonds set in a classic design, the delicate rose-shaped clasp. It was the bracelet I had worn on my wedding day, the one my grandmother passed to my mother, and my mother gave to me when she passed away. I remembered clearly every word my grandmother had whispered when she gave it to my mother. This is not just a piece of jewelry. It is our family's pride, the strength of women who have faced storms and still held their heads high. And now, it was on the wrist of the woman sitting there, laughing with my husband. I felt every beat of my heart tighten like a vice. So many questions rushed through my mind. Why is it there? When did David take it? Did he understand what it meant to me and my family? James lightly placed his hand on the bar, pulling me back to the present. Sophia, are you okay? I took a deep breath and shook my head. My eyes were still fixed on table 8. Pour me another glass, James. He didn't ask anything more, just quietly did as I asked. The new glass, not letting the wine touch my lips. I just needed my hands to stay busy so they wouldn't tremble anymore. David leaned closer to Emily, and I saw clearly that he was explaining something. His finger pointing at the bracelet. Every one of his gestures, every tender glance at her, every light suggestive touch, all of it felt like a blade cutting deeper into my heart. I didn't know how long I had sat there. All the sounds around me seemed to fade. All I could feel was the scene before my eyes. My husband and another woman with my family's sacred piece of jewelry, writing their twisted story right in the restaurant I had built with my own sweat and tears. I set the glass down on the bar, my eyes no longer holding the soft gaze of someone wounded. I understood that tonight, if I stayed silent, something even worse would happen. And I also understood that bracelet. It wasn't just a piece of jewelry they had dared to flaunt. It was a reminder. It was time for me to act. I still sat there, my hand resting lightly on the untouched champagne glass. My eyes fixed on them. The sounds around me seemed distant. Only the wild beating of my heart remained. Suddenly, I felt someone's gaze from the far end of the bar. I turned. A man in his 30s, tall and slender, his face tense, was staring at David and Emily's table. His eyes couldn't hide their darkness. His hand gripping his whiskey glass so tightly his knuckles turned white. In that moment, a chill ran down my spine. I softly asked, "James, is he a regular?" James shook his head slightly. "Oh, this is the first time I've seen him here." I couldn't take my eyes off the man. A cold truth slowly emerged within me, like the final piece of this cruel puzzle falling into place. I picked up my glass and walked toward him, my heart full of confusion and the pain of betrayal. He looked at me as I stopped beside him, his eyes filled with unease. I spoke, my voice soft but clear. "Are you also watching that table?" He was silent for a moment, then gave a quiet sigh of agreement. "My name is Lucas Bennett, and the woman sitting there, Emily, is my wife." My heart ached. I nearly had to grip the edge of the bar to stay standing. I whispered, "I'm Sophia Harris. The man sitting with her is my husband." We looked at each other. And without another word, we understood. We were both victims of a charade staged by the two people we had trusted most. Lucas let out a bitter laugh. "She said she had to meet with a female colleague tonight." I believed her. He swallowed hard. "David told me the exact same thing. That he was busy with work. And then he brought her here. To my own restaurant." David and Emily seemed completely unaware they were being watched. They stayed wrapped in their own world, exchanging soft words and stolen looks. I once believed those glances were meant for me alone. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my hands from shaking. Then, I saw it. Emily subtly pulled an envelope from her handbag, discreetly sliding it toward David beneath the tablecloth. David glanced around quickly, then took the envelope, slipping it into his suit pocket with the ease of long practice. I clenched my hand into a fist. Lucas gripped his whiskey glass tighter, his voice strained. Why did he just take that from her? My eyes stayed fixed on them. "I'm not sure, but I've never seen them exchange anything like that before. There's something not right about this." Lucas looked at me, determination flickering in his eyes. "We can't just sit here and watch this happen." My heart pounded. What I felt now wasn't just the pain of betrayal, but a growing alertness to something more secretive, more dangerous than I had imagined. I knew tonight wouldn't end here. The truth had begun to surface. And I, together with Lucas, wouldn't let them carry on their act for another minute. Lucas set his whiskey glass down on the bar, his hand trembling slightly with anger. I could see the resolve in his eyes, the same resolve I felt rising in my own chest. "We can't just sit here and witness this," Lucas said, his voice low but steady. I met his gaze, forcing my breath to slow. "Do you have access to your company's accounts? Can you check if that envelope had anything to do with money?" Lucas pulled out his phone, his eyes glued to the screen as he logged into the Bennett Group's financial system, the family construction company where he was heir and CEO. "Emily has been handling the company's finances since the crisis last year," he muttered. "She said it was to help me focus on rebuilding the company." His fingers moved quickly across the screen. And a few seconds later, Lucas froze, his face pale. He raised his gaze, his complexion drained of color, his voice strained. "Sophia, I just found 3 transfers totaling $50, all sent to a political support fund under David Harris's name." A cold wave ran down my spine. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It wasn't just emotional betrayal. David and Emily were conspiring to use Lucas's company money for their own agenda. And it wasn't a small amount. I clenched my fist, fighting the surge of fury inside. But I knew that losing control now would only make it easier for them to deny everything. "Lucas, we need to be smart about this. If we lose control, they'll blame us for blind jealousy. They'll try to turn the tables." Lucas's gaze hardened with resolve, a silent confirmation passing between us. "You're right. So, What do we do now? I glanced around. I need to call my lawyer right now. And I'll ask the restaurant security team for discreet support. We have to gather enough evidence before we make a move. I signaled for James to come closer, whispering just loud enough for him to hear. James asked Sam from security to come see me as discreetly as possible. Lucas was still reviewing the accounts on his phone, his eyes darkening as he found another transfer of $5 just a week ago. He's been doing this longer than I thought, Lucas said, his voice low and heavy. I placed my hand on his shoulder. Light but resolute. Lucas, tonight they think they've won. But we'll make sure they walk into their own trap. He clenched his jaw, the confusion in his eyes replaced by steady resolve. We'll show them just how badly they underestimated us. The restaurant was still filled with the sound of conversation, laughter mingling with the soft clink of glasses. Everything looked like a normal evening. But for Lucas and me, the air felt suffocating. Lucas set his phone down on the bar, the screen filled with the account records he had captured. His voice dropped, tinged with bitterness. They really thought no one would notice. I swallowed hard, my eyes still locked on the pair sitting in the distance. David and Emily stayed deep in conversation, their smiles untouched by any hint of guilt, unaware their charade was moments from crumbling. Can you record audio? I asked quietly, my eyes not leaving them. Lucas gave a brief glance of agreement, opened a recording app, and set his phone on the bar, angling it just right to capture their voices without drawing attention. If they say anything more about the money, we'll have direct evidence. I gave a small sign of agreement. My hand clenched into a fist as I saw that all too familiar sight. Emily's smiling, her hand sliding into David's. The diamond bracelet on her wrist caught the light, the chandelier's glow making it sparkle even more. I turned away for a moment, swallowing the lump rising in my throat. That bracelet, once my grandmother's, once the pride of generations in my family, was now a trophy on that woman's wrist. Lucas leaned toward me, his voice tight. How can they do this right in front of us? I took a deep breath, holding on to my composure. Because they think we can't see. And now, that arrogance will be what brings them down. At the corner of the restaurant, Sam had discreetly positioned 2 security staff near the area. They blended in with the guests, drawing no attention but ready to act if needed. David leaned in close to Emily, said something that made her giggle. Her hand brushed over her wrist again. The sight felt like a knife twisting deeper. But instead of pain, I felt my heart go cold. The fury turned into resolve. Lucas glanced at his watch, murmuring, Hermes Birkin Beach, they're about done. I see David checking the time. Lucas murmured, just as he said. David glanced around, then signaled for the waiter. Emily adjusted her hair, that smile still on her face. They had no idea their last moment of safety had already passed. I slowly set my glass down on the bar, looking up at Lucas. When the check arrives, we move in. By then, they'll have no excuse left. Nowhere to run. Lucas glanced at me, his face tight with tension. But the confusion was gone from his eyes. Sophia, tonight they'll learn we're not so easy to push out of the game. I glanced quickly around the restaurant. The background music still played softly. The lights still warm, like any other night. But to me, this was the last quiet moment before the storm broke. The server approached their table holding the check in a brown leather folder. David took it, a flicker of tension in his eyes as he glanced at the total on the slip. Emily kept smiling, her hand lightly touching his. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding, but my mind strangely calm. Lucas, let's go. We left the bar together. Each step felt like it erased all those days I had tolerated. All those times I told myself to be understanding. The distance between us and those two was now only a few paces. Tonight, right here, all their lies would be exposed under the brightest lights of Haven Bistro. Lucas and I walked forward, our steps heavy but sure. The soft yellow glow cast onto the wooden floor made what should have felt cozy now seem cold in a way I couldn't name. David looked up as I approached. For a second, I saw him freeze, as if he couldn't believe his eyes. But then he quickly regained that familiar calm, the polite smile appearing at once. Sophia, you really came. I thought you were in the kitchen. I didn't answer right away. My gaze stopped at Emily's wrist. where the diamond bracelet still glittered under the lights. I gently pulled out a chair and sat down. My back straight, my eyes fixed on the man I once called my husband. I only came to offer my congratulations. After all, it's a special night. Emily gave a nervous laugh, tugging her sleeve down to hide the bracelet. But too late. I leaned slightly, my voice just loud enough to be heard. The bracelet, I said. I assume David told you it was a family heirloom. Emily flinched, her eyes darting to David for help. He shrugged, forcing a weak laugh. It just looks like the one you used to have. Must be a coincidence. I pulled out my phone, opened a photo of the clasp where the small engraving read, Lucille T. Boston 1954. I held it up in front of them next to Emily's wrist. No words were needed. It was obvious that bracelet isn't just my grandmother's keepsake. It's a symbol of the courage and resilience of a whole generation. And today you chose to wear it in some cheap little play. David sat silent, his eyes blinking rapidly. Emily had gone pale. I tilted my head, looking straight at her. I wonder, besides that piece of jewelry, how much more of my property has he used to impress you? The air around the table seemed to thicken. David cleared his throat, trying to stay calm. Sophia, you're misunderstanding. This is a work dinner. Emily is just helping me connect with a new sponsor. There's nothing wrong going on here. A soft laugh escaped me as I looked toward the bar. Lucas approached with quiet purpose, placing his phone on the table. The screen spoke for itself. 3 transfers. $50. All directed to David's campaign fund. She's my wife, Lucas said, his voice steady and low. And those transfers, Emily had no right to approve them without me. Emily opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. David flushed red, his eyes darting around as if searching for an escape. I turned to look at Sam, the head of security, standing a few steps away. I gave a slight nod. He understood. His 2 staff moved in, standing at angles beside the table, discreet but firm enough to send a warning. I suggest you stay seated, I said, my eyes locked on David. The check hasn't been paid yet, and I'd really hate to call the police over a dine and dash. Not to mention everything else. David planted his hands on the table, his voice sharp. Sophia, you're making a scene. Are you trying to destroy my reputation? I leaned back, my voice calm. A real reputation doesn't need shady money or stolen jewelry to build. And if that's what you're afraid of losing, that's truly a shame. Calm. A real reputation doesn't need shady money or stolen jewelry to build. And if that's what you're afraid of losing, that's truly a shame. Lucas said nothing more. He just stood there, his gaze as hard as steel. Emily's hands trembled as she fumbled in her purse for a credit card. So clumsily, she dropped the whole bag. A few papers spilled out, including a financial memo with Lucas's company logo. I bent down, picked it up, and scanned it quickly. Internal transfer, discretionary funding, campaign expenses, no source listed. I didn't need any more. David tried to steady himself with a deep breath, but his pale and faltering voice revealed the truth. Sophia, you're misunderstanding. I did all this for our future. It's all temporary. I can explain. I folded my arms, my eyes fixed on him. Explain what, David? The company funds you stole from Lucas? The family heirloom bracelet you so boldly gave to someone else? Or the property documents you tricked me into signing? My words rang clear in the restaurant, which was now falling silent. Nearby diners began glancing over, some quietly pulling out their phones, their screens casting pale light on curious, surprised faces. Emily started trembling, tears welling up as she clumsily tried to gather the bag she'd dropped. She stammered, Sophia, I didn't. I never thought it would come to this. Lucas stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder, his voice controlled but firm. And what did you think, Emily? That you could embezzle company money forever without anyone noticing? That I'd stay blind and trusting forever? Emily broke down, sobbing. Her cries mingled with the whispers of the crowd, the click of phone cameras capturing everything. A few people had started recording video, their camera lights flashing. Seeing the crowd watching, David's face flushed, then went pale. His eyes darted around for an escape. He forced a weak smile, his voice faltering. You're all misunderstanding. This is a private matter. Please don't misinterpret. I didn't need to say another word. With a firm motion, I reached down to Emily's wrist, unclasped the diamond bracelet, my grandmother's bracelet, the one that had weathered so much with my family, and fastened it back onto my own wrist. This piece, I said, will never belong to anyone but the one who deserves it. David started to speak, but I cut him off. Don't say another word, David. My attorney filed the lawsuit this morning. The restraining order is being finalized. You won't get another chance to touch my property or my life. Lucas gave me a nod of solidarity. He turned to Sam, the head of security. Please make sure they don't leave until the check is paid. I'll be calling the company attorney to begin formal charges for my wife's embezzlement. Sam gave a quick signal, and 2 staff quietly moved to block the main exits, their expressions firm but calm. David slumped into his chair, his eyes vacant. Emily could do nothing but sob, hiding her face from the phone cameras now pointed at them. The whispers in the restaurant rose like waves. I heard snippets. Is that David Harris? Wow, this will be all over the internet by morning. Shameless, doing that in broad daylight. A steady breath calmed me. The bracelets weighed on my wrist, a quiet reminder of what I'd reclaimed. All those months of patience, of telling myself to endure for the sake of family honor. For marriage, gone now, replaced by the peace of someone who had reclaimed justice for herself. Lucas pulled out his phone, calling the company lawyer, his voice steady but firm. Prepare the charges. I'll send over the full evidence tonight. I glanced at David one last time. There he sat, the image of a once glittering politician, reduced to a broken man under the gaze of onlookers and cameras recording the final moments of his exposed facade. I turned and walked back to the bar, where my glass of wine still glowed golden. Lucas walked beside me, both of us silent. No more words were needed. It was all enough. 6 months after that fateful night, Haven Bistro still lit up every evening. But the space somehow felt warmer, filled with more positive energy than before. I stood in the open kitchen, watching my team busy preparing the main course for tonight's special event. The light reflected off the countertop, catching the sparkle of the bracelet on my wrist, the piece I reclaimed, not just as jewelry, but as part of my family's soul. After everything, I bought out David's share of the restaurant. The divorce went through faster than I expected. When the financial evidence and footage of that night spread across social media, David lost all footing. Sponsors withdrew, his reputation crumbled, and he was forced to resign amid ongoing financial investigations. My grandmother Lucille's house, the one I once feared I might lose through my own naivety, is now fully in my name. Thanks to my lawyer's dedication. Each morning I wake up in that house. I feel a peace I never knew before. My restaurant not only survived the ordeal, it flourished. The strength I showed that night made Haven Bistro a favorite destination. People come not just for the food, but for the story of the woman in the kitchen. Local papers wrote about my journey as a symbol of resilience and independence. Lucas became a friend I never imagined having. We helped each other rebuild. He restored his company after cleaning up the damage Emily left behind. Many evenings after work, we'd sit together, sharing the challenges of that tough chapter. There was no romance, just deep understanding and respect for what we had both endured. I remember clearly that first evening after officially signing the papers to buy David's share. I stood in the kitchen, the place that had once made me feel small amid life's demands, and now it was where I felt completely in control. The kitchen lights glowed softly against the bracelet. I raised my hand, admiring the sparkle of each tiny diamond. Each one seemed to tell a piece of the story. My grandmother's sleepless nights sewing for pennies. My mother's double shifts to raise us. And now, my own fight to reclaim what was mine. In my heart, my grandmother Lucille's words echoed. Diamond hard, diamond bright. The women of our family must live like that. Haven Bistro is no longer just a restaurant. It's my second home, the place where I found myself again after all the trials. Every guest who walks through the doors, I greet with genuine respect because now I know more than ever. No success comes free. No happiness is kept without a fight. David, the last I heard, he had moved to a small town in the Midwest, managing a family insurance office. His once bright political career was over without a word of regret from the world. Tonight, I wear that bracelet again as I prepare to serve a dessert I made myself for a special table. The people who stood by me through the rebuilding of the restaurant. As the kitchen light catches my wrist, I smile softly, not the proud smile of triumph, but the quiet smile of a woman who finally held on to what was hers. Since that fateful night, I've learned the greatest strength of a woman isn't in silent sacrifice, but in the courage to stand up and protect herself and her family's sacred values. I reclaimed everything I once feared I'd lost: my home, my restaurant, my honor, and the freedom in my heart. Haven Bistro is no longer just my work. It's proof of resilience and self-respect. I know I chose the right path, strong, independent, and proud. What do you think of my choices and how I faced this story? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to follow the channel for more true heartfelt stories about life.